I'm lucky enough to say that I spent many hours with Dr. Mendoza, both personally and professionally. In 1998, I faced a challenge. Had it not been for the opportunity to spend that time with Dr. Mendoza, that challenge would have been very difficult for me. His words of encouragement throughout my life gave me the opportunity to stand up for a cause that was meaningful not only to me, but to our community. Dr. Mendoza saw an individual that needed some support, some help, and some inspiration, gave me those, and developed a human being that I could never become without his friendship.
I began working with Aggie back in the early 1990s. I changed positions in the School of Nursing, and my new position required me to deal with student and faculty issues. And I would meet with Aggie and we would go over the situation and make sure we have all the information before we would make a decision or a recommendation. And it was really difficult because the decisions and recommendations we made were life-altering for the individuals that were involved. And there was one particular case that was extremely difficult for me. I was losing sleep, I couldn't eat. We got through going over everything, we came up with our recommendations, and I looked at him and I said, Aggie, how do you do this day in and day out? And he looked at me and he said, at the end of the day, when I go home and I reflect on what I did, if I can know I treated everybody fairly, then I know I've done my job the very best that it could be done. And that's a life lesson I've learned from Aggie.
It was the summer before my freshman year in college when I first met Agapito. He was talking to a group of us Latino students, and I remember thinking about how much information he shared with us and how motivating he was for us to learn more and to especially learn about our culture and our traditions and to arm ourselves with that information with whatever we were going to do in life. Fast forward 12 years later, after that initial experience as a student, I ran into him at an event at UMKC where he was with his wife, and he asked me, well, what is it that you're doing now? And I said, well, I'm in a great job, but I feel like there's something more that I could be doing. My mother was also diagnosed with cancer, and I'm finding all these challenges that people are facing as they try to maneuver the healthcare system. And he asked me, well, have you ever thought about becoming a doctor? And that was never in my realm of possibility for me. And that's another thing that Agapito would get you to do. He would get you to think outside of your comfort zone and outside of those limitations that perhaps you felt for yourself or that you were feeling from outside sources. And luckily, for all those potential patients, I did not become a doctor, but he really set me on the path that I'm on now, which is culture, education, working with community through the arts. And I will always be grateful to him for that.
I met Agapito about 25 years ago when I first began my work in education. Agapito was the first Latino that I met in higher education, and he was so proud of his culture, of being Latino, of being Chicano, and he inspired that same pride in me. The first thing he did for me, he volunteered to teach culture classes, and he taught culture classes on Saturdays to our parents, and he left those parents so full of pride and to be proud of who they were. And those parents would also tell us, make sure you teach this to our kids. So he just left me with just such a capacity of appreciating who I was and what our culture was. What he did has left an impact in our community, and I am proud to have called him a friend.
I remember the semester after my freshman year, walking into Dr. Mendoza's office to sort of deliver him the bad news about how I bombed my first year here at UMKC. And I sort of told him my experience and reflected to him that I was really struggling. And what he told me, rather than sort of pat me on the back saying, that's okay, you know, we'll figure this out, just study a little harder, he just said, you might need to study something else. And because of that, I did. And his honesty and his direct feedback was fantastic. And because of that, I did change majors, and I did become successful here at the university and still managed to graduate in 4 years. And what a tremendous accomplishment I felt for myself and I felt for my family, and I definitely appreciate that. And I give a lot of credit to Dr. Mendoza because of that.
I am the director of El Grupo Folclórico at Totonilco, and in 1979 we were performing at the Guadalupe Center for their Cinco de Mayo. After the performance, we had a lot of people come and tell us how great the children were. But I specifically remember Mr. Agapito Mendoza because he stayed with me for a while and talked to me, and he asked me why I was doing this. I told him that it was something since I was a little girl because we had fiestas in our community, and he told me, he goes, Maria, if there's anything I can do for you, please count on me. Well, it was not long after that I asked him, after we applied for our 501c3 for a non-for-profit, if he would be my board president. And he said it would be a pleasure. And I was so excited because I knew then that my group was going to succeed to have a leader like him, helping me, supporting me, and encouraging me. I remember always seeing him in the audience with this big smile, and he made me feel so good because I knew I was doing the right thing. People like him are hard to come by, but it meant a lot to me, and I will miss him forever.
One of the earliest memories I have of my dad has me huddled over some first or second grade homework with him nearby, reading the newspaper. I recall him encouraging me to do as much of the work as I could on my own. However, I was always assured that he was right there for me in case I needed. He would motivate me by promising me rewards for being able to complete as much of the work as I could on my own. Sometimes these rewards might be going down to the corner store for a popsicle on a particularly warm day. Sometimes it might be taking a special evening hike through the arroyos that ran up and down the mountainside that actually served as our backyard at the time. From a certain perspective, the Agapito Mendoza Scholarship can be defined by that very powerful memory. It speaks about the importance of family and community to students that are just entering college. My dad, of course, fulfilled the role of a father to me perfectly. It was perhaps not until after his passing that I realized to what extent that he actually played that role for a much greater family. My dad was passionately dedicated to helping others realize their potential and provided guidance to those in need. It is this legacy that the Agapito Mendoza Scholarship honors, and I know that he would be very proud to know that to this day he still continues to influence Latino students in achieving their educational dreams.
The University of Missouri-Kansas City is proud to be the home of the Agapito Mendoza Scholarship and to continue the legacy of support that Dr. Mendoza began over 25 years ago.